Hi, everybody. This is SAAD. Many of you have heard by now that yesterday the results of the Canadian federal election came in. Justin Trudeau's government uh, remains in power with a minority government. And so yesterday I tweeted a few tweets after the results had been finalized. And I thought today I would spend, a couple of minutes, not so much lamenting what happened, but rather to talk about a particular psychological insight as relating to yesterday's election. Specifically, the idea that people have a very, very difficult time to be convinced by any information that is contrary to a staunchly held position that they currently hold. So, contrary to what we might think of humans as being these hyper rational human beings who simply process information in an unbiased manner, at least that's the view that classical economists portray humans as being, humans don't do that, right? We are prone to all sorts of emotional based biases that cause us to be quite resistant to information that refutes or that shakes some of our positions. I had discussed this briefly in The Consuming Instinct, my 2011 book, so I thought I would read you actually a passage from that book and then continue my argument regarding what happened yesterday in the federal election. So here we go. This is from page 275 in The Consuming Instinct. Generally speaking, the processes by which personnel decisions are made are hardly consistent with axioms of rational choice as postulated by classical economists. For example, the primacy effect is highly operative in hiring decisions. The interviewer forms a very rapid opinion within the first 30 seconds of meeting a candidate, with the rest of the interview often being used to support the initial judgment. In this case, the anchor position was made on the spot. And so, of course, what I'm talking about in this clip is a more long-term held position, which is even more resistant to change. But in any case, let me continue with the reading. Incoming information that is incongruent with the rapidly formed first impression is discounted or ignored. Suppose that a man were to wear for an interview at a stuffy investment bank. Suppose that a man were to appear for an interview at a stuffy investment bank wearing a diamond-studded earring. The interviewer might very rapidly decide that this guy is a, quote, rebel who does not fit the firm's image. All subsequent information might suggest that this is the absolute top candidate. Nonetheless, the interviewer has steadfastly anchored her position in the reject camp. This reminds me of the brilliant quip by the Harvard economist John Kenneth Galbraith, who reportedly stated, quote, faced with the choice between changing one's mind and proving that there is no need to do so, almost everyone gets busy on the proof. Beautiful quip, because it exactly speaks to the fact that it is very, very difficult to get people to process information in an unbiased manner, especially when that information goes contrary to some position that they hold that is dear to them in some way. For example, it forms part of their political identity and so on and so forth. In chapter 7 of my forthcoming book, where I talk about the use of nomological networks of cumulative evidence to try to convince someone of a particular argument, I start off by actually recognizing that, the game is not won simply by providing people with information if they are fully resistant to process that information. So this brings me to yesterday's results. It is difficult to think of a prime minister who, committed more legal, ethical, moral violations. I'm not saying that he woke up every day committing all of these infractions, but there's certainly enough negative stuff that happened with this prime minister that could have caused some of his supporters to say, well, I supported him in 2015, but in light of this information, I'm going to revise my opinion. The reality is that, well, yes, the Liberals lost some seats. They used to be in the majority position. Now they're minority government. But, rough, I can't remember what in terms of popular vote, I think last time around it was about 37% maybe. And this time around, it's probably around 33% that voted for Justin Trudeau. So whatever, plus or minus a few points. The reality is that undoubtedly, most of the people who voted for him probably voted for him again. Now, this is not specific to only Justin Trudeau. Those who love Donald Trump, any transgression that Donald Trump might make that might cause someone to reevaluate their support for Donald Trump is likely going to be ignored, at least by most of his supporters. Same thing might hold true for Hillary Clinton, and same thing might hold true for any politician that we love with such alacrity that we are unwilling to revise our opinions of that person, even if we saw them, chopping off the head of a puppy and eating the corpseless body. We're probably going to say, well, that's okay. That's a way for them to harvest their own food for climate change. So there is probably nothing that Justin Trudeau could have done. And I mean, he did a lot of stuff that should have caused people to walk away from him, that would have regrettably altered their position of him. So again, I think the bigger issue here is that as someone who studied psychology of decision making for my whole professional life, I truly do appreciate how difficult it is to get people to change their minds. And so it is much more than simply provide people with information and they will make the right choice. Because as I also explain in my forthcoming book, when I talk about thinking versus feeling, we are both a thinking and feeling animal. And so to the extent that classical economists have given us this view of humans as these perfectly rational human beings who will weigh all of the information and come to the correct decision, whatever that means, the utility maximization position, well, that, of course, is simply not true. Most non-academics recognize this, but in the rarefied world of academia, many academics still hold on to the view that humans are these wonderful computational, creatures that are perfectly unbiased in how they process information. Based on yesterday's results, that is certainly not true. So I think honest people are those who are always willing to revise their positions in light of incoming information. I mean, again, that's what makes science so beautiful versus, say, religion. Religion operates from a starting point of revealed truths. Here's the truth, it's in my book, and my book is right because I know that God has written the book, and off we go into an endless cesspool of tautological BS. Science doesn't operate on revealed truths. Science operates on provisional knowledge. What is true today might very well collapse under incoming scientific evidence that proves the contrary position. And so this is what's beautiful about science, is that it forces us to be, or to have, or to exhibit epistemic humility, meaning that yes, I may be very forceful in thinking that my scientific position is correct because all the evidence points to me being correct, to this position being veridical. But I always have to have sufficient epistemic humility such that if new evidence comes in that proves my position to be incorrect, then back to the drawing board I go. Now, of course, this doesn't mean, as I again explain in my forthcoming book, that scientists themselves don't succumb to many of these motivated reasoning biases, but at least the epistemology of science is meant to protect against these very real human frailties. There you have it, folks. May God have mercy on the soul of Canada as we embark on more diversity, more equity, and more inclusion, or rather more diversity, more inclusion, and more equity, aka the die religion remains operative in Canada. Cheers, everybody.